Good evening. A very warm welcome to all of our viewers on Globespan 24/7. It has been a really hot day here in New York today. And I don't know if Guyana was hot as well, but it went up to almost 97 degrees. So it was really hot. Having said that, the temperature is going down now, but it's still pretty warm. We're still sunshine here in New York. As you know, we get night until like 8:30, 9 o'clock. So we want to welcome you all to the program tonight, and of course to Mr. Noir Singh, who make this program available to all of us, and to Devin, our technical specialist for broadcasting it live. Tonight we are very honored to have two distinguished gentlemen. One of them is a commissioner to Elections Commission, Commissioner Sase Gunraj. He's been no stranger to us, an attorney at law, and he has been in the forefront of informing the media on deliberations within the commission. So Commissioner Gunraj, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you, sir.
And also with us tonight, like Mr. Timothy Jonas, chairman of ANOG, an attorney also in Guyana. And I think, Timothy, you are now considered a family of Globespan, a member of the Globespan staff, non-paid. So we want to welcome you again to the program tonight.
Thank you very much, Chaz. Good to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, before we start our program, it was sadness that we want to report the passing of the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Mr. Owen Arthur. Many of us recognize that he was in Guyana for the elections as one of the observers, and he passed away yesterday. So on behalf of Globespan 24/7 and to all our viewers, we want to extend to the families and to the people of Barbados our sincerest condolences to Mr. Owen Arthur. Also, tomorrow, we will have the cremation of Mr. Komal Chand. He has been a long-serving parliamentarian of the PPP. He has been in the executive committee of the PPP. He has been the president of GAU for many years, and he has really been a great leader of our country. I must confess that he's from my village, or I am from his village. We know each other very well. And we really would miss him, and we again extend to the families and to the friends of Komal Chand our deepest condolences. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I believe, there will be the cremation of Mr. Chand at the Ramsek foreshore. Gentlemen, before we move on, would you like to say anything about the two prolific sons of the Caribbean who has passed away?
Charles, first of all, it's quite unfortunate that we've had to lose two such treasured sons of the Caribbean at a time when we're waiting for elections results. Komal, I've had a long association with him, a very humble fella, and who was very steadfast in his work and in championing the cause of workers generally and sugar workers in particular. Prime Minister Arthur, you recall, as you said, was part of the electoral observer mission, the Commonwealth, I believe it was. And I do recall, as I posted on social media today, I do recall his reaction on March 5th when that naked attempt was made to, or the threat was made to revoke the accreditation of observers. I remember the reaction particularly of PM Arthur, and it is something that has stood with me up to today. I wish that they would, have been here at least to see the outcome of this process, but that notwithstanding, may their souls rest in peace.
Tim, you would like to...
Sorry, condolences to their families as well.
Although I didn't have the privilege of meeting Owen Arthur, I did see him at the Ashman building. And the reports to me of his response to what was going on there were very graphic. He was a man he knew my parents. They were at University of the West Indies at the same time. And he was a man who clearly tried to do the right thing, was steadfast in insisting that democratic ideals must be upheld. And he was not compromising in that, and he did not compromise on that in March in Ashman's building. These days, 70 is young, and I think that the Caribbean has lost someone too early. Mr. Chand, I knew we didn't share the same political view, but in the pursuit of his political view, he was steadfast, he was good-hearted, he was well-intentioned. And again, that's the kind of person that Guyana needs. People who have the personal commitment and the personal integrity to do the right thing. So I wish to extend condolences to their friends, their families, and to express gratitude because they have both done their share, done their part to help Guyana.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tim, I'm going to start with you tonight. There was a report in the newspaper that the coalition was reaching out to have some dialogue with political parties. The three parties that earn a seat in the parliament, ANOG, JLP, and TNM, you have emphatically rejected any talks with the coalition until, as you reported, but all three of you reported, after declaration and swearing in of the next president. Your political leader, Mr. Ramkarand, in one of his writings says, APNU-AFC risk being remembered as cheats who cannot be trusted with political power. What other steps or strategies will the three parties use if the coalition refuses to accept the result and concede?
That question comes up again and again, and there is no answer to that question in Guyana. If they refuse to come out, if they refuse to obey the court, obey the law, obey GECOM, acknowledge the inevitable declaration that must be made given the decisions of the court and given the recount, the way it was done, the observance of the recount by the international community, by all and sundry. If they insist on manufacturing and fabricating all of these dead and overseas voters and all of these so-called anomalies in respect of which they do not present proof, but their followers grasp as at a straw, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing you can do. We have to ask the international community to help. And the sanctions have started already. By doing that, Granger will be condemning Guyana to the kind of economic hardship that we have not seen since the 1980s. We will be destitute, we will be isolated, we will be out in the cold, and the harm that is done to the society, to everything in our society, not just to the people, but to the economy, to the structures, to the infrastructure, to everything, will take years and years to rebuild after eventually they are put out, because they will be put out. We will not be able to survive, and they will not survive politically if they are stubborn and pursue the course of action that they seem intent on pursuing. There needs to be a way out for them. They have to find it. So far, they have stubbornly closed every single avenue of retreat. Ralph has the gift of understatement when he says they risk the possibility of being seen as cheats. They're cheats. They tried to rig an election, and they have manufactured one lie after the other, so that their story has gone pointing north to we won, to pointing south that the elections were rigged by the PPP. They have gone a full 180 with their followers in tow, and it is unbelievable that they can look at the society, look at the country in the face, and continue with those lies. but it's what's happening. The country is facing disaster if they insist on doing what they're doing.
Thank you, Tim. Commissioner Gunraj, you're a PEP nominated commissioner on GECOM. Do you report to anyone as a commissioner of GECOM?
Charles, that's a misnomer if there ever was one. There are no political party representatives on the commission. The Constitution, which gives birth to the office that I hold, caters for commissioners to be nominated by the leader of the opposition and appointed by the president, 3 of them, and 3 persons to be nominated by the president in his own right. And as a consequence, that's how you have the so-called bipartisan commission. Of course, that makes the role of the chairman even more important. I can't help it sometimes that my views coincide with that of the PPP, but to say that I'm a PPP commissioner would be a misnomer. Insofar as it relates to reporting, there is no requirement or there is no reporting mechanism for the office. And as a consequence, there is no necessity so to do in the process.
Good. I'm glad you cleared that up. So in your deliberation as a commissioner, do you brief political parties? Do you brief civil society? Do you brief religious organization? Do you brief anyone in Guyana of what's going on within the commission? Are you obligated to, or you don't have to?
I'm not obligated to, and I wouldn't say I brief any of these or myself individually or as a collective. I wouldn't say that. Well, let me speak for myself here because I don't know what others do or are obligated to doing. But I don't brief anyone. From time to time, I will interact with members of all of those groups, both as a collective and individually as well. Civil society, from time to time, you're called upon to give views. From time to time, you're called upon to update on various matters. Not lastly, this ongoing saga. From time to time, I've had to interact with my learned colleague present in this room, Tim, on matters that may be of interest to stakeholders in this process and so on. So it is a multifaceted role, but there is no legal or constitutional obligation to briefing anyone. And it is for that reason, that independence that the office enjoys, Charles, that allows it to have security of tenure. You can only be removed. You don't retire from the Elections Commission. And as morbid as this may sound, more than one of my predecessors in office have actually vacated the office only to go to the great beyond. So it is an office that enjoys tenure, not dissimilar to a judge, that you have to only be removed. You could only be removed for cause, and under very specific circumstances as outlined in the Constitution.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Commissioner, because the impression the average Guyanese out there believe is that there are 3 PPP commissioners and there were 3 coalition commissioners. I'm glad you raised that up because as you sit in the commission, you're representing the people of Guyana, not a political party. And having said that, most of the time, after meetings of the commission, the press is usually briefed by Commissioner Alexander and Commissioner Gunraj, that's you. There seems to be at these briefings, like these 2 commissioners went to different meetings because what you're giving to the public, oftentimes they're not in congruence with each other. Why is that happening?
Let me give you the long answer to this, Charles. As I said earlier on, the office, GECOM as a whole, is governed by laws. GECOM is is born out of the Constitution. The Constitution sets up the Elections Commission, as it is called. The office of commissioner, which subtends from that commission, is also set up by the Constitution. The office of chairman, which was very heavily discussed and litigated over the last few years with the unilateral appointment of Patterson, etc., and the whole saga that led to the appointment that led to the appointment of Justice Singh. The functions of GECOM is set up by the Constitution.
Understand?
All of this.
I'm sorry, I'm coming to the functions, but I'm talking about the media briefing.
So, well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
As a consequence, all that GECOM does, and mind you, GECOM has two functions. One is the conduct of elections, and two, the conduct of registration, which is more or less a precursor to the electoral process. Those are the two functions that GECOM has, nothing else. Everything else that it's all ancillary to what GECOM does. I say all of that to say that my role and functions as a commissioner and my execution of those functions and those roles are governed by law. As a consequence, every action, every submission, every suggestion I make in furtherance of a decision in the quest for a decision at the commission is grounded in law. As a consequence, when I make public statements outside of GECOM, it is not in furtherance of a political line or in furtherance of some scheme to achieve some sinister purpose. I'm not saying that anyone else does that. So my utterances are in line or in keeping with the laws that govern my role, my office. Oftentimes we see positions being adumbrated in the commission that are not similarly circumstanced, and that is why perhaps sometimes you see, and what you see happening sometimes is that what is discussed outside is not necessarily the decision of the commission. What you see discussed outside sometimes is the discussions that may have gone before a decision. So what happened? I mean, Tim was involved in some marathon cases during this election process. He might have expressed and made elaborate submissions, which in some instances were upheld and some instances were not upheld. But he can't hold on to those submissions that he made that were not upheld as though they were upheld. And that is what you see happening sometimes. And that may be one reason to account for the vast differences in what is put out there.
So it's more of the opinion of the discussion rather than the decision of the commission. I got you. Mr. Jonas, according to Kaitor News, over 100 countries around the world has demanded that the recount figures in the election be used for the declaration. The coalition accuses international community of partisanship behavior for not joining them in condemning voter irregularity. They believe it is very unconscionable, according to their word, that the international community is not joining them in condemning these irregularities. Do the coalition have a case?
Well, Charles, before I go there, I want to respond to what Sase said. Sase, I consider Sase a friend, so I hope he's not going to take offense. But there are 3 PPP commissioners and there are 3 PNC commissioners on that commission. Bibi Shadiq, Robson Ben, and Sase Gunraj are all loyal PPP folk appointed by Barajalio. For anybody to pretend otherwise, they would have to put the shoe on the other foot and say that Trotman was never a member of APNU or PNC. He's an honest, straightforward WPA man. And Vincent Alexander is an independent. And Corbyn is not PNC and is not related to the other Corbyn. We can dither around it and we can pretty it up and we can do all of that, but there's not a single instance when any of those two sides broke ranks in any serious decision and said, y'all talking nonsense, I'm going to go and vote with the other side. They have solidly voted in every single serious decision for the last 20 years in en banc, 3 versus 3, with the chairman having the swing vote. So don't let's pretty it up. The two large parties arranged this, they planned it, they perpetuated their duopoly on the political landscape by agreeing between them that they would each put 3 and trying to leverage to see how they could get the 4th for the swing vote. And that's why we're in this mess. So we're in this mess because 3 cancel out 3 and somebody gets fooled when they appoint a chairman. Our only hope as Guyanese is that the chairman is truly honest and independent, having been appointed with the agreement of both sides. And
I'm glad you preempt that discussion, because I want to ask Mr. Commissioner that question afterwards, but you brought it up now. But before you answer the question I asked you, let us listen to this tape that was recently played on Mr. Benchkoff's program. Devin, you have that clip?
I'll say, my young brother David, remain calm. Remain optimistic. You've got to be optimistic. But I say this, be prepared. If it is another few days or weeks to take a massive, it may be unpopular in certain quarters, a massive step forward to take us out of this confused environment, and for the sake of your children and our children and their children, do what is necessary. Put aside the Constitution, put aside the laws. You are at this moment, and we hope for a long time, Commander-in-Chief. Take action so that your people, our people, the people of Guyana, will honor you no matter what it costs.
Tim, is he speaking in coded language, being a former prime minister? How do we deal with things like this?
He said it was a slip of the tongue. I think that's a serious tongue. I think it's got a slit in it. You cannot, in this environment, in this atmosphere, in the Guyana we're in now, say to the leader of the party that has lost the election and is on the back foot and has lost every court case that he has filed trying to delay through his nominees, trying to delay the inevitability of a lawful result. You cannot say, forget the Constitution, do what you have to do. You're the Commander-in-Chief. Take charge, bring us out of this mess. Some people will be vexed, but you are the one to lead us, and call that a slip of the tongue. It's one thing that Hammy Green was saying. Hammy Green was there in the bad old days in the 70s, in the bad old days in the 80s. Hammy Green was opposed to Hoyt in 92. Hammy Green, during this period, has benefited from a Hamilton Green Act. I could not believe it when I saw that Hamilton Green was willing, after all of his years in his old age, to make that kind of statement. That's the kind of statement that leads to a deterioration and leads to protests, to the breakdown of law and order. And when these old men make these statements and they incite 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds out in the road, and those 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are hurt and killed, he has no excuse. He's a man in his 80s. He should not be inciting people who have their whole life ahead of them. It's disgraceful.
As Commissioner, I know I don't want to get you involved in the political fray, not those things, but you want to make any comment on those things?
I have to, Charles.
Okay.
I myself, I personally try to step aside and stay away from comments, but this has incensed me so much, and I've actually made public comments on it prior. This is seditious. It is seditious, and there are offenses known to law that deal with these sorts of things. And I would have expected that the morning after that video was aired, ranks of the Guyana Police Force should have been visiting the home of Hamilton Green and questioning him with a view of instituting charges. Because you see, while I take comfort in the fact that many people will ignore such statements, such irresponsible statements, the reality is it only requires a few people, a handful of people, to take that seriously and take it to the next level. I disagree when you say that it is coded language or a veiled threat. I believe it is an open and rank incitement of people out there, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. All these years, Hamilton Green has been talking about the moral and spiritual revival of the city in Guyana, and he comes at a time when he should be making right for his life hereafter. To be imperiling the life of Guyanese by such insightful statements, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
And I think Parley Adams, I think, put it beautifully, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh, Parley Peters. And I think Hamilton Green knew exactly what he was saying. And Tim rightly said, to say the slip of the tongue, I think that's disingenuous, to say the least. And I think, Commissioner Gunraj, you're right. I think the police should have visited him to find out exactly what he meant, what he said. Those are serious, serious statements. Commissioner, I want to get back to you. I know the Constitution, as you said, was set up, the Elections Commission, Articles 62 and 161. And it sets up some of the, what the Commission can do. And you rightly said, there are two basic functions. One is the registration of electors, and two is the holding of elections. In those broad functions, you have roles of different individuals. You have the role of the chairman, you have the role of the commissioners, you have the role of the secretariat that execute the orders of the commission. We want to go to commercial break. I want you to think of those questions. And when we come back, I want you to tell our audience, what are those roles? Because we also speak of Section 22 of the Representation of the People's Act. All that incorporate the role of GECOM in doing what they have to do. So when we come back, Commissioner, I would like you to expand on those things for our audience.
I'll be happy.
Take the family, or maybe go with friends, on a train getaway to Boston and Cape Cod. Explore Boston City with a multi-day hop-on, hop-off bus tour where you can immerse yourself in its rich history and New England charm. Then take the Provincetown ferry over to Cape Cod. The quaint villages, serene beaches, and renowned seafood restaurants will make you never want to leave. This Boston and Cape Cod package includes round-trip coach tickets to Boston, the Provincetown ferry, and 3 nights hotel accommodation. So book Boston and Cape Cod with Travelspan. It has something for everyone. Call Travelspan to book at 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. And book your Boston and Cape Cod train getaway today.
Globespan 24/7 continues its efforts to serve the communities. The platform provides for all sides to air their views and discuss solutions. Viewers in Guyana and across the world are participating in these discussions. Globespan's platform offers Guyanese an opportunity to express their concerns and discuss solutions in the political realm, thereby addressing the polarized situation. Discussions also include social ills such as alcoholism, domestic violence, suicides, and much more that have been plaguing the nation. Globespan 24/7 platform connects the diaspora and the world with Guyana. The concept is helping to shape the development of Guyana. So Globespan 24/7 needs your support to continue to serve the communities. Go to globespan247.com and pledge your support with from as little as $5, $10, $15, or $20 or any amount each month. Your support will help and go a long way to develop Globespan 24/7 as an independent platform that brings in all sides for the communities. By including all sides, we can bring long-lasting changes for all Guyanese. Log on to Globespan 24/7 today and pledge your support.
Thank you. Welcome back, audience. As we continue our discussion here tonight, with us, of course, is Commissioner Sase Gunraj from the GECOM and Mr. Timothy Jonas, Chairman of ANUG. Commissioner, before we went to break, we talked about the functions of different persons within the Commission. Would you mind tell our audience exactly what the functions are with these different individuals?
So, the Commission, as is well known, is a 7-member commission. Without acknowledging what Tim said earlier on about the composition of the commissioners, what you have are 6 commissioners and a chairman, except that the chairman has a casting vote in circumstances when there is a tie in the votes, etc. The chairman is no different from the other commissioners. The chairman is herself a commissioner, him or herself a commissioner. The board, the commission serves or is akin to the board of any company, and the secretariat is your management structure, your management team and the team that gives effect to the decisions of the commission. And that is clearly spelled out in the commission that in the Constitution, that the commission holds the direction and control of the secretariat and its officers. The secretariat is responsible and answerable to the commission for its actions and is responsible for carrying out the decisions of the commission. This chief election officer is the head of that commission, the head of that secretariat, and as a consequence is the primary person who is responsible for executing the decisions of the commission. That being said, Section 18, I think you quoted the legislation incorrectly a moment ago. The legislation is the Election Law Amendment Act, Act number 15 of 2000.
Okay.
Section 18 of that act specifically states that the chief election officer shall be answerable, not in that exact word, but paraphrasing it says, he shall be responsible to the commission and be subject to the direction and control of the commission. That being said, he is responsible. He has to carry out the dictates of the commission. He is not independent of the commission. He's a creature of the commission. And it has been peddled in some circles. I'm not even sure if it is the CEO that has catapulted himself to that position of saying that he's a constitutional office holder. He is not. He is not. While the Representation of the People's Act creates the office of CEO, he is merely an employee of the commission. He has certain statutory functions that he's obligated to execute, but he, at the end of the day, is an employee of the commission, a creature of the commission, if you may. And now you mentioned Section 22 of the same legislation, which speaks to removal of difficulties. And I believe later on, given an opportunity, I'll want to go into detail in relation to what the commission can do in relation to the general scheme of things, particularly in the running of elections.
And Commissioner, that is what our audience is asking. Many of the questions coming up that Devin is posting on our screen is that people are asking, what is really going on with the commission? Because this CEO, as you rightly said, look, Mr. Nilofar Singh, Mr. Gunraj, can Claudette Singh declare the result of the election using the recount without a CEO? We know that is not possible. I think the Constitution says that the order of things was that the CEO have to submit a report to the commission, and on the basis of that report, then the commission will make a declaration through the chairman. But why is the commission allowing the CEO to drag on this thing for so long? Can the commission just make a decision and bring this to finality?
While, as you'd recall, Charles, there has been several bits of litigation that have interspersed the electoral process. The current one that is engaging the courts, I believe, is the third, if my memory serves me correctly, piece of litigation that is hampering the conclusion of this electoral process. I say that to say that on several occasions, and with deference to the commission, I figure I may not get a lot of support by saying this, but the commission has acted, and in some instances, I believe out of decency and deference to the judicial process, has paused or has held its hand, much to the chagrin of persons out there who want to see this process completed. But that being said, the commission has at all times taken steps and given directions, albeit that some of those directions have not been carried out in the manner contemplated, or in some instances not been carried out at all.
And that brings us to the point, Commissioner, because we keep, again, the question keep coming up that if can the GECOM, can the commissioner, GECOM commissioner, can you fire the employee of this office of CEO? Can you appoint someone independent of GECOM? Do you have to promote the deputy CEO? What formality does it take if the CEO is not following the instructions of the commission?
It is not without the power. The commission is not without power to terminate the services of the CEO. And similarly, the commission is not without the power. The commission is perfectly able to take such steps as is necessary to either replace the CEO or to give directions to have its decisions carried out.
Mr. Jonas, Mingo March 13 declaration, the famous declaration of Region 4 on March 13th. He had the coalition with 136,057 votes, the PPP with 77,231 votes. The recount and the statement of polls in the hands of all the parties except APNU-AFC showed that the PPP got 116,000, the coalition got 116,941, and the PP got 80,921. Mingo actually inflated the coalition votes by 19,116 and deflated, if I can use that term, the PPP vote by 3,689, a total of 15,427. Those were ghost votes. Those votes never exist. It only exists in Mingo's mind. Now, are these the dead votes that the APNU, the coalition, is talking about that voted in the election? And I think my battery is going down. Would you want to talk about that by the time I get my power back on?
Well, Charles has a loaded question, of course. Mingo invented votes that didn't exist. So the numbers that he used do not reflect what are in the ballot boxes. The numbers he used are greater than the number of people who voted as reflected in the ballot boxes. Now, you can't try to link that to the dead and overseas fallacy, that whole myth, because what Mingo did is he just magic numbers. The fact is that when the presiding officers at each place of poll counted the votes that were cast at their place of poll and made their record and generated their statements of poll to send to Mingo, it was exactly those same ballots that were recounted at the conference center under Order 60 when everything went awry and Claudette Singh went to court and informed Justice George that she would be doing a recount. So the ballots that were counted to generate the statements of poll are the same ballots that were counted to generate the statements of recount. So if there were dead people that voted, those same dead people voted on the 2nd of March and their ballots got into that ballot box. If overseas people voted, those same overseas people voted and their votes got in the ballot box. So you cannot separate what Mingo did from the recount. The ballots are identical. They were put into the ballot boxes, sealed in there, and taken out again for the purposes of the recount. So it is the same ballots. This is not in dispute. Even APNU does not pretend that this is not the case. The same ballots counted to generate the statements of poll that Mingo fudged are the same ballots that were counted in Ashman's building to produce the genuine result. The same genuine result that is very, very close to the SOPs published by the PPP. And as we know, APNU never showed their SOPs.
And that's the point where I think Mr. Nandalal today, he was talking to someone, I saw it on the social media, when he was bringing out the point that the fraud that Mingo committed, they want the court to support that fraud. And in his opinion, the court will not be, be caught in that kind of scenario. Is that your view as well?
That is my conviction, yes.
Commissioner, I want Section 69 of the Constitution says that Parliament shall begin 4 months after the last Parliament was dissolved. Is the Elections Commission flaunting our Constitution by not declaring the result and allowing the new president to make proclamation for the new Parliament?
Charles, I'd prefer to refrain from comment on that because, and there's a simple reason for me doing so. There have been so many timelines that have been set in the electoral process that have now been flouted and reflouted and flouted over again. And this is but one of them. And I suspect that this may be subject of litigation, may be the subject of litigation sometime henceforth, and as a consequence, I'd prefer not to offer comment on it.
I know
Tim would be braver than I am.
I know you're an attorney, and so is Tim as well. I know Tim mentioned that these numbers is a legal term for it. They're not mandatory, or they're not obligatory, whatever the legal terminology is. These timelines set by the Constitution.
Some rules are directory. That's the expression you're looking for, as opposed to mandatory.
That's correct.
To answer your question, Charles, when 4 months finished, the world doesn't explode. 5 months, 6 months, at some point you got a whole parliament. So you may not have met the 4 month deadline, but that doesn't mean you can never have a parliament again. And therefore that can't be treated as mandatory, can it? See, we tend to use big words and we tend to get into legalese and wax lyrical, but most of these things are very, very commonsensical. I want to talk about another area of common sense, because you're right about the 4 months, and the fact is that in this regard, the 6 commissioners cancelling each other out, they had no power to do anything about it unless the chairman decided to do something. Now, if you're an administrator, if you run anything from a conglomerate to a cake shop, and you're managing employees, you're managing staff, and you get a whisper that a member of staff doing something wrong, you don't stay up in your ivory tower and pretend nothing's happening. So the first time that Mingo used spreadsheets and came up with a nonsense number, for me, when he was ordered to go and do it again, the chairman and hopefully 6 commissioners should have been sitting down in that room eyeballing him when he was doing it. You see, he smugly said to all and sundry in that room with him, all the party representatives, the international observers, the local observers, if you don't like what I'm doing, there's a legal recourse. He was talking about an elections petition, of course, because he felt it couldn't be challenged. So he looked at them in their face to say he's going to do what he wants, and if they don't like it, they got an elections petition. But the person he wants sworn in is going to be sworn in. Now, it would have been much more difficult for him to do that if Madam Justice Claudette Singh, having been alerted that this man was being fraudulent, was sitting down in that room watching him do the thing properly. Because if he wasn't doing it properly, she could act immediately. But what we see that everyone disappeared like mist. All the people who were over him suddenly were absent. And that's why we're here 4 months later. That could have been solved on that day. On that day, that could have been solved. The same thing applies at every step of the way. So that when, after torture, we got to the Caribbean court, and the Caribbean court said to Lowenfield, your ridiculous report disenfranchising 115,000 people is illegal and it is set aside. The same chairman could have said to Lowenfield, come, we've convened a meeting, sit down and do your report, be waiting. You're at that end of the table and 7 of us here and we're waiting. And she could have somebody waiting outside the door that if he failed in any respect, by a majority of 4-3, because I suspect those 3 PPP commissioners would agree with her. You fire him, and you invite that person to come in, and you hire that person, and you ask that person to do the job, and you receive his report, and you declare. This thing is not difficult. It doesn't need to be complicated. And when Thursday comes, if the decision goes as I think the decision must go.
We're coming to that, Mr. Jonas, if you don't mind. But Commissioner, based on what Mr. Jonas just said, I know you're not a chairman, but you're a commissioner. Was that possible, what Timothy just said?
I don't disagree very much with what Timothy has said. The misfortune is that the narration of events or suggestions that he has made were not done, and here we are almost 5 months later. But I want to, and I can't even sit here with a clear conscience and a straight face and justify that we are here 5 months later. I can't justify what may clearly be labeled as dithering over that time. But once more, I will try to be pragmatic and say that the best time to plant a tree would have been 100 years ago. The best time to resolve this would have been just a few days short of 5 months ago. But as Confucius said, the next best time is now. And just as Tim said, that come Thursday when the court rules in a manner that he expects it to rule, similarly, I expect that the suffering that this nation has been subjected to over the last 5 odd months would come to an end.
And that'll lead me to my next question. And the thing is, Commissioner, is that for your information, that the Elections Commission is going to the record book in the Guinness Book of World Record, and Commissioner says Gunraj is one of those commissioners who is in the commission that we could not declare result after 5 months of the election. So you're in good hands.
When the Bible was written, Charles, Judas was listed as one of the disciples too. So I guess.
All right, Mr. Jonas, Mr. Durga, and a lot of other people asked me to ask you this question: is that the Court of Appeal, as you said, and they declared that they will rule on Thursday. They will give their ruling on Thursday. In my opinion, I think that is too long. They could have ruled earlier, but the thing is, they're ruling on Thursday. However, regardless of what the decision of the Court of Appeal is, if we go to the CCJ goes on vacation from next Monday, August the 3rd. And they're going on vacation for 2 months. So what happened if there's an appeal of this decision to the CCJ?
No, it doesn't work like that, Charles. The CCJ is an autonomous body. Sase was just speaking about judges being independent and having security of tenure, answering to themselves. The CCJ very much is designed to be independent, autonomous, and answers to itself. So yes, they have a yearly holiday that is sorted. They go for 2 months in the summertime. But if something urgent comes up, such as this, I have absolutely no doubt that they will very, very promptly deal with it. During their holiday, come back from holiday, meet via Zoom or Skype or whatever, they will deal with it. I don't think Guyana needs to worry about that in the slightest.
But do you think that this decision, whichever way it goes, will go back to the CCJ?
I look forward to seeing opposing counsel argue before the CCJ that the decision of the CCJ given in the David case means something other than what the CCJ's decision given in the David case means. They have argued before the Chief Justice and before the Court of Appeal on a construction of such a clear judgment that I am sure has shocked and surprised the authors of that judgment sitting in the CCJ, and I look forward to seeing those lawyers go back there to try to pretend to those judges who wrote the decision that they were saying something other than what they so clearly said. I would like to see that. Something tells me they're not going to be that grass-faced.
Tim, there was a lot of reporting in social media. When you look at the CCJ cases, a lot of the judges there on the court ask questions. In our Court of Appeal, the only person who asked question was the president of the court. Why is that so in our Guyana Court of Appeal?
Charles, in a decision that's pending, I'm not going to comment on conduct of judges or what the judges did or how they did it.
Why is it that they don't ask questions? What is the purpose of that? Do they ask questions? Do the other judges ask questions as well?
If a judge needs to ask a question, the judge will ask a question. If a judge does not need to ask a question, he won't. And in the CCJ, I'm sure you saw the David argument. Sometimes the judges asked questions and sometimes they didn't. I don't think they interrupted me once in the David case when I was speaking. I've appeared in the CCJ many times, and very often they'll interrupt and you'll have a wonderful back and forth. As I laughingly said to one of them once, the unfortunate problem with disagreeing with judges is you end up paying costs. But sometimes they don't ask questions. So you can't predict it. And I must say this, Tim, that you have been amazing in your presentation to the court, to the High Court, to the Court of Appeal, to the CCJ, and so also has been Mr. Mendez and the other attorneys, your co-worker there, Kamal and Mr. Ramkran and so on. But the thing is, it's a learning experience. Charles.
I see Commissioner Gunraj was in both the High Court hearing and in the Court of Appeal. Commissioner?
Just as a spectator, Charles.
All right. Commissioner, I want to play this video we pick up on social media again before I go to the next question for you. Devin, do we have that video?
That is why the chief elections officer is being brought private criminal charges is being brought before him, trumped up criminal charges. Correct. There is no evidence to substantiate that. But the only objective in this matter here is to label him. Label him! Because he's black, therefore he's a thief. That is what the...
Okay, what can GECOM do, Commissioner, to stop or reduce racist comments by all political parties? And I also want to ask the question, do GECOM have an obligation to speak out against these comments? Also, GECOM was supposed to monitor the spending of political parties, because I think the law says they can only spend so much in a political campaign. Is GECOM doing anything to force those compliance to those rules?
Charles, you have this tendency of asking a million questions all roll into one. Let me start from the bottom. No, in relation to monitoring of campaign spending and spending by political parties, while there is some very archaic legislation on the books, GECOM has never enforced it and has never taken steps to enforce it. So the short answer is no. Insofar as it relates to hate speech, racial hostility comments, etc., there's legislation to deal with that. There's actually a constitutional body set up, the Ethnic Relations Commission, that is charged with the responsibility of monitoring and dealing with such issues. Suffice it to say that prior to the election, a code of conduct was signed by all of the political parties. That code of conduct was signed by no less a person than David Granger, representing the APNU-AFC. Irfan Ali signed on behalf of the PPP. Every other contesting political party signed on to that document. We have seen egregious breaches to that. Unfortunately, I believe that GECOM does not have it does not have the wherewithal, perhaps because it did not set up the framework and the mechanism to monitor and police and to take steps in relation to that. However, the Ethnic Relations Commission also has responsibilities to deal with that. But we have seen the level of abuse being ramped up. Only last week, myself and my colleague commissioners were forced to issue a statement calling out and condemning the very callous attacks and personal attacks being made against the chairman herself. We have seen attacks being made against the representative of the chairman, the legal representative of the chairman, the lawyer who's appearing for her in court. We have seen attacks. I myself have been subjected to comments. I can say it doesn't bother me, but everyone is not similarly circumstanced and will not react the same way to these things. But in relation to the specific comments of the speaker in that video, that is also a matter before the court, and I'll prefer not to comment as well on the merits or otherwise of the case that is engaging the attention of the court.
Timothy, you want to comment on those statements?
Our country is plagued by 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, isn't it? You have that same gentleman decrying that Guyanese can vote for a man who's got 19 fraud charges. And that same gentleman now saying he's trumped up charges against Lowenfield. And he doesn't see the irony and the hypocrisy in what he's saying. Now I hold no brief for Irfan Ali. He may or he may not be guilty. I have rather strong views about Lowenfield because I was personally involved. But we have a system where the party in political power, in a winner-take-all system, abuses its power. We've had that for 50 years. So we've had Ben Shop, who is one of the most violent, poisonous people out there right now, but who was remanded to prison in circumstances which were unconscionable and stayed in there a long time in a PPP government until even they were embarrassed and pardoned him or whatever and let him out. He should never have been there. The circumstances in which he were put there were unfair, and the whole country should be embarrassed. On the flip side, as soon as this government got into power, you had charges against Ashni Singh dropped, Winston Brassington dismissed, the GRDB man dismissed. There has been a campaign of prosecution based on political motives. Every last one has failed. Look at Nandalal in the books. How ridiculous is that? You want to sue an ex-attorney general about law books? The man said it's his books, but law books? That is as petty and as petulant and as sad as our leadership has gotten. So we have 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Nobody can claim the moral high ground. And all of Guyana should be embarrassed because 90% of us continue to support this nonsense.
Well said. And Christopher, just on the screen, Christopher said, due that both parties attack each other on race, and they talk race talk, and that's a fact. And it, I don't know what we can do on this program or any program that, we always hear the in Desiderata that all of us read that it is still a beautiful world. The world is still beautiful, but then that beauty of the world should begin with me unless we change our own attitude, our own ways of thinking, and the way we look at things, the world will continue to be that way. Gentlemen, when we come back, we want to talk about Article 94. Tim, you will tell us about the president. Article 94 says in our Constitution, the president may be removed from office if he or she commits any violation of this Constitution. And I've gone through our Constitution and the violation of this president, President Granger. And the question is why he was not removed. The problem is to remove the president, you go to Article 180, and it says, and it sets out the procedures. First, you need to get not less than 50%, half of the elected official, and then to condemn the president, you'll have to get 2/3. So it seems an impossibility, even though you can remove the president, it's almost impossible to do that in our current Constitution. So I guess I answered my own question. Well, let's discuss some of the issues about moving forward in the next half an hour when we come back from our break.
Has changed, but spending quality time with friends and family still remains important. So this summer you can still plan a vacation safely with an RV rental. Enjoy the comforts of home away from home. Call Travel-Span 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. All RVs are self-contained and comes with all the amenities of a home on wheels. All so that your friends and family can be safe and comfortable. So don't wait. Call us now, 718-845-0437, and book your friends and family vacation with an RV today and explore as many states as you wish. And remember, travel plans, Travel-Span. Call us at 718-845-0437.
Hey America, let's put fun back into the summer with safe train vacation packages to Washington, D.C. from New York City. That's right, you heard it. Travel-Span got your train vacation packages from New York City to Washington, D.C. This 4 days, 3 nights trip will include round-trip coach train tickets, 3 nights hotel accommodations, a multi-day hop-on, hop-off sightseeing tour of Washington, D.C., and a Monuments by Moonlight tour. You heard it here first. Travel-Span is offering train vacation packages this summer. Call Travel-Span at 718-845-0437 for rates and more information. That's 718-845-0437. And let's explore closer to home this summer. Travel plans, Travel-Span.
Welcome back to Globespan 24/7. Again, we want to thank Commissioner Sase Gunraj, Commissioner of GECOM, and Mr. Timothy Jonas, Chairman of APNU and United Guyana. Welcome back to our viewers. Gentlemen, before we went to break, we were talking about Article 94 about to remove president. And we know even though the article says you can remove the president, the procedures to remove the president is almost impossible. You need 2/3 of parliament, and that is not likely to happen. The question is, over the weekend, the coalition had many meetings in regions 2, 3, and 6, I believe. Their meetings far exceeded the requirement that the restriction that the COVID task force put in place. Yet, no one was charged. As a matter of fact, in one of the pictures, I saw a police officer was there in police uniform. Are we living in a dictatorship right now as we speak? Commissioner, you want to start?
You know, it seems as though, Charles, what is good for the goose, certainly something else goes for the gander. Because as late as today, I received a call from someone who said that their husband is a Hindu priest, a pandit, and was arrested for having 7 people in a temple worshiping yesterday morning. In fact, while I'm sitting here, I received a notification that that gentleman has been released from custody. You have persons being stopped at certain police checkpoints and being asked why they're not wearing masks, even though they are one of 2 people in a vehicle, a private vehicle. Yet you walk around and you see certain bars open and certain ones are closed. You see, like you correctly pointed out, political meetings organized by members of the governing party and aided and abetted by the protection of police officers. I think, Tim, a moment ago in describing the, I can't recall the exact phrase that he used, but having the benefit of being in government. And I guess that is what we are seeing.
Tim, you want to?
Misuse of office, perhaps.
I know. Tim, you want to zoom in on that?
You know, when you take all system in Guyana, the government, once they have a majority in parliament, is an elected dictatorship. They control parliament, and therefore they pass the laws to sustain themselves. And therefore they are all powerful. The minister can pick up a phone and command the police. If the police don't listen, the executive have powers of hiring and firing, promoting and demoting. The same is true in the army. The same is true in the public service and in the various government agencies. We have had a series of elected dictatorships, except for that brief period of renaissance when we had a minority government and things suddenly got very uncomfortable. But yes, the government in office is a dictatorship, not because of electoral fraud necessarily, but because in a 2-party system, in a winner-take-all arrangement, the winner takes all. The winner controls everything.
And that is so true. And the thing is, we have to live with that. As you said, we keep electing the same people over and over again. Gentlemen, the question that many of our viewers have tonight is, when will this come to an end? Dr. Rose asks a question. He says, if the chair is the chair going to ask, Jasmine Singh says, Jasmine King, our focus is to get the results of the election declared. Dr. Rose said that if the chair instruct Lowingfield to submit a report and he refuses, could she then ask the deputy CEO, which is Myers? If she refuses, then what other option? Is it the chair or the commission? And I guess the chair will have to make the final determination. What we need, the bottom line is this, Commissioner, we need the result to be declared tonight. When will we get this result?
4
Not
plus
tonight.
months ago, 4+ months ago, I would have told you by the 4th or the 5th of March, results should have been available to you. But like I said earlier on, Charles, there are a plethora of options available to the Commission. And I could tell you in my personal capacity, I am exploring all of those options with a view of ensuring that I advocate for whichever one I think can will lead us out of this in the shortest possible time.
Tim, you want to, what happened if Lowenfield, it appears as though Lowenfield is now embedded in what he's doing. He's not going to change. I don't think he will give the report that the Commission expects. What after that? What happened after that? I think you mentioned it earlier in your presentation.
If I were the commissioner, if I were the chairman, he would be fired on the spot. And I would already, in anticipation of his defiance, have earmarked someone to replace him to do the job. I would have briefed that person. I would have them waiting in a convenient room nearby so that it could be done immediately.
And you think that person should be in the Commission, or it can be someone out of the Commission?
It needs to be someone of clear integrity, known to the society, and who has the courage to do the right thing, knowing that half of the country will hate him for it.
I think I'm getting a problem with my computer again. I hope I don't get knocked out. Gentlemen, in our closing, we are actually getting to almost at the end of our program tonight. Commissioner, I know earlier we talked about the role of the chairman and the role of the commissioners and the role of the CEO. Do you want to tell us explicitly what can the chairman do and the commissioners do so we can have finality to this? The question is, maybe Tim can also help here. If the Court of Appeal dismiss this appeal, do we have to wait on the CCJ if they have indication for appeal, or can the commissioner just go ahead and make a declaration and move on?
Charles has said over and over, the holding of the hands or the staying of the Commission's hand, so to speak, on every occasion has been by choice and not compulsion. I think it was on one occasion that there was an injunction restraining the Commission from acting. But there has been no impediment preventing the Commission from declaring, etc., except by choice. The way that discretion has been exercised and the way that the exercise of that discretion has been met by the populace, I believe will determine how that discretion is exercised in the future. For example, you heard the Attorney General saying to the OAS General Assembly last Tuesday or Wednesday, it was on the 22nd, that he does not know why GECOM is not doing its work by declaring. When in truth and in fact, the day prior, when the Honorable Chief Justice was delivering her ruling, it was the said Attorney General who was pleading with the court to have some sort of stay to prevent GECOM from acting. As is now public knowledge, the court, the chairman through her lawyer undertook not to take any steps. Now, that being said, and you're asking for the role of the Commission, unlike many other public agencies, public bodies, or persons who are authorized to carry out public function either by the Constitution or some other law, GECOM has the liberty by virtue of Section 22 of the same 15 of 2000 to take such steps as may be necessary, and this is it, to remove difficulties in their execution of the various laws that govern their operation. Not many other agencies have that. In fact, Off the cuff, I can't tell you of any other agency that may have such wide powers. Why, perhaps? When legislation is drafted, it tries to take into consideration every possible scenario. The framers of that piece of legislation must have contemplated that during, I don't think, of course, they would have contemplated the kind of nonsense and shenanigans that are being played out currently, but they must have contemplated that during this electoral process, there are unexpected occurrences that may arise. And it gave that exceptionally wide latitude to the Commission to take such steps to remove those difficulties. And what has the Commission done? The Commission has actually utilized those powers, entrusted to it to remove those difficulties. What the Commission has done, by virtue of that piece of legislation, has enacted Order 60 of 2020, planned and executed an entire recount exercise. That recount exercise has now generated results which one stakeholder, obviously displeased with the outcome of that process, is trying everything under the sun to prevent the completion thereof. So GECOM has its powers. It has been exercising its powers. Maybe it has not been exercising the plenitude of powers to the extent that all and sundry would like it to, perhaps to the extent that I would like it to be exercised. However, that has been happening. But one must recognize, and I hold no brief for GECOM either as a body or its individual members, but one must recognize the shenanigans that are at play here.
And Mr. Jonas, I think you will refer to that as the Attorney General, is it intellectual dishonesty? I think that's a terminology that you use in this program. But what I found in the last presentation to the Court of Appeal, Mr. Jonas, is that Mr. Jeremy did a better presentation, I guess because he read from his notes, so it was not as boring as the other presentation. And I think even the Attorney General, he also not the best of presentation, but he read also, so I think it was a little easier on the individual to listen. And I'm not saying this facetiously or to push them down, but the thing is, for two senior counsel, in my own personal view, their arguments are so incoherent and they're so disjointed. I don't understand how they can go in front of a judge and win a case. I'm told that they went before the CCJ and they lost a lot of the cases that they argue. I know, Mr. Jonas, you won the case against the Minister of Finance, against the Trinidadian company. So your presentation is so coherent, like many of your colleagues who presented the argument. Now, after the court ruling on Thursday, what prevents GECOM, as Commissioner Gunraj says, they've been, even though Ms. Kite, the chairperson's representative to the court, saying that the chairperson will wait on the court. Will she wait on the court if it's appealed to the CCJ again, or can she go ahead and just make the declaration?
The two things you dealt with there, Charles, I don't think you were quite fair to counsel who was arguing in support of Ms. Jones' case. A funny thing has happened recently. First of all, that was a very difficult case to argue. It's hard to try to construe the decision of the CCJ in the way that counsel was trying to construe it, and they were trying to do the impossible. So I don't know if you can come off looking good doing that. So I don't think it is fair to them to criticize them for that particular argument. But one of the things that has happened in the evolution of litigation this year, especially with the advent of Zoom, and therefore the availability to members of the public to see arguments live, is that suddenly there is a bit of grandstanding by some of the people who are more politically oriented. You can present a very quiet, very innocuous, and very legally sound case in a very boring monotone that puts everybody else to sleep except the judge who's listening. Or you can talk a lot of nonsense in a loud, charismatic, preacher-like way and rile up the audience, and you're talking trash. So what I've noticed is that the actual conduct of litigation by counsel has evolved very quickly with the knowledge that these boys now performing for a crowd. It has its drawbacks, and I hope that it levels out. But I think overall, it is for the public benefit and it is in the public interest for everybody to have access to what's going on, because the greater the transparency, the more people that can see what's happening, the more people who can criticize, who can comment, who are involved and informed, the less the opportunity for secrecy and the corruption that happens with secrecy. So I think overall, the public access to litigation now, by just turning on your computer and you're seeing what's happening in court, I think it's a good thing. But the judiciary and counsel are still in a stage of evolving to meet the new need and hopefully to avoid the temptations of grandstanding, which we have seen some of it.
You've spoken well as an attorney for your fellow attorney, except to say this, and I totally agree with you, except they argue before the Court of Appeal, the CCJ, and they lost their case with a boring presentation. This fight, it was better. I hope the results are, I don't know what the results are going to be. We'll wait on Thursday and see. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for spending the evening with us. In closing, Commissioner, tell our viewers, in a very, I don't know if you can be as optimistic as you can be, when will this finally be put to rest, in your view?
Charles, one thing that I've tried not to do, and I think I've been enjoying moderate success in this entire period, is not to lose hope and not to be less than optimistic. Because I believe if I lose hope in this process and if I lack optimism in it, I will not have the strength that is necessary to see this to the end. I remain hopeful that the right things will be done and be done in short order. I recognize, and I've said this from day one, from day two of this process, and we are now at day 100 and almost 50 perhaps, that I recognize the difficulty and the pain, the discomfort and the anxiety this is causing on our nation, is causing to people further abroad. You're sitting in New York, spending your evening worrying about the outcome of a process in Guyana. I hope by the dint of common sense, by the dint of decency, and by the sheer feeling of the pain that the Guyanese people have been undergoing for the last few months. Look, we have COVID-19 as a real thing. Today we've had 19 new cases. And I believe, I don't want to get political in that regard, but a resolution of this process is necessary for a committed approach to those other ills that are facing our society. With COVID comes all of these other issues, spin-off issues, financial and all of those. As a consequence, I am hoping that this can be done very quickly, but the pragmatic side of me will be quick to tell you that this is the hope that I've had 140 odd days ago.
Commissioner, before I bring in Tim, how is the camaraderie between the PPP commissioners and the coalition commissioners in the commission?
The least I say about that is better, Charles.
Okay, we get a point. Timothy, again, we want to thank you for spending evening with us. What do you see? Do you see this thing come to an end soon, very soon, not so soon? What?
Charles, I smile because my friend Sase is too honest. We don't know what happens in the commission. And in fact, we are precluded from knowing what happens in their deliberations. But I'm satisfied, and I said it months ago, I said it when the recount was going on, that I'm sure there are good people in the GECOM secretariat, but I am equally certain that that secretariat has gone rogue. It has been infiltrated by people who are corruptly determined to ensure that the outcome of the elections results in an APNU victory. And something tells me GECOM does not have control of its secretariat. And this is not the fault of the chairman, she came in belatedly. It's not the fault of the commissioners because they cancel each other out. So you have to look at the person who preceded the chairman, you have to see how these people got in there. You see, we talk about 4 months and what can GECOM do? And Sase has staunchly defended them to say they're doing the best and they've taken all these steps. But we have not yet seen GECOM instruct its secretariat to put the statements of poll on a website for all and sundry to see. And that would have solved a big problem long ago. But something tells me GECOM can't do that. Something tells me that they would meet a rebellion in their own secretariat if they tried to do that. I don't know, I'm speculating. But that would so easily have resolved things long ago.
Not to be rude, Charles, but Tim, you'd recall me putting a motion specifically for that purpose on the floor of the commission, and it was wrongly voted down.
And
I've never seen what happened internally there.
The commission did post the SOP online. Commissioner, do you as a commissioner, did you have copies of the statement of polls, or you're not allowed to, that's not privy to the commission?
There's a process by which commissioners get those statements of poll, a process which commenced on the night of elections, March 2nd, and a process which was scuttled just as the Mingo shenanigans started to unfold on the morning of, or I think we got up to the evening of March 4th, the evening, that's a Wednesday evening, and as Thursday morning, you recall when there was that famous bomb scare on the premises. We got through that formal process at just under 2,000 of the 2,339 statements of poll that were generated. Well, of course, it's 2,339 polling stations, and each station generates 2, a regional and a general.
Right.
So we got just under 2,000 pairs before that process fell apart. And the reason for that...
Do you follow Region 4 SOPs?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
The outstanding ones are the ones from Region 4.
Mm. So it's only about 300.
That says a lot about how far the Secretariat has gone rogue and out of control. This is the first time I've heard that. I know that there was one side advocating to publish the SOPs. And again, they cancel each other out. And in our wisdom, the chairman said no. Good. But for there to be a system for each commissioner to receive SOPs and that to have been stymied by Secretariat, that shows how badly gone we are. And some of these things may even be beyond the control of the commission. It's possible that those SOPs don't even exist anymore.
Well, Mr. Jonas, there is a statement online that said Mr. Jonas should take this job. If you're offered a job, will you take it to get this thing over with?
You know, Charles, many people might not know, but before this whole brouhaha, before even the first set of 6 names were mentioned as as potential chairman and presented to Granger by Jaglio, I was asked to be a chairman. And fortunately, circumstances made me decline. So I had my commitments at the time, and I had to say no. But I have absolutely no doubt that although at that time I was a staunch AFC supporter, and I had advocated for a change of government in 2015, and I had met Mr. Granger several times in his early presidency and expressed support, I have absolutely no doubt that despite all of that, I would have been found unfit and improper.
I was going to tell you that you save an embarrassment. You'd have been unfit and improper. So. Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure tonight. We have a really candid conversation. Commissioner, thank you so much for taking time off to be with us tonight. Timothy, it's always a pleasure to have you, and we look forward again have you hopefully this Thursday. The Court of Appeal will, whatever decision they come up with, that hopefully will be the end of it. We don't know. The possibilities are enormous, but Guyana need to move forward. And as the Siddhartha said, listen to the dull and ignorant. Even they too have their stories. So, Mr. President, listen, maybe we might be ignorant, we might be foolish, we might be stupid, but at least listen to the country. The country needs healing. In 2015, you were so prolific in your statement that you want the country to move forward. What has changed, Mr. President? So please, for the sake of our country, save our country from further deterioration. You can bring this to an end on Thursday, call the chairman, accept the results, and let's move on. So, gentlemen, thank you so much to Nohar Singh and to Devin, to all our audience out there. We want to thank you so much for being part of us. And gentlemen and ladies, as you would know, all the programs in Guyana, Globespan 24/7 has been bringing it to you. All the court sessions on Thursday, they'll be again there. All these things cost money, and we're asking you to please give your support to Globespan 24/7 so we can continue these programs. I know our audience, we have very attentive audience. They don't agree on everything, but I think they're very receptive. And we look forward to please chip in whatever you can to make this program to continue for some time to come. So again, Commissioner, thank you. Timothy, thank you so much. And until the next time, God bless you all, and God bless our dear country of Guyana.
Thank you.
Sase, pleasure to have you. Take care.
Sure.